Okay, welcome back, Astro listeners, to Star Lady Soul Reader Network. This is Media Monk, and as always, I'm pleased to be joined. I think I have Star Lady on the line. Are you there, Star Lady?
Hello, Media Monk.
Yay! And we all know Star Lady is indeed Kim Marie, the managing director for our Evolutionary Astrology Network. EAN, as we've come to call it, does provide the signature EA course for certifying new EA astrologers. And, she's been studying that paradigm for nearly 40 years now, so she kind of knows her stuff. So any interest in that EA course or anything on our website at www.evolutionaryastrology.net, just give us a ping on the website or give us a call at 605-348-5111 for more information about anything there. So we got a busy week, Star Lady. It's a full moon, and I can feel the undercurrents with that full moon, and I think it's also got some pretty strong aspects. So I'll turn it over to you.
We sure do, but August always tends to be busy for Media Monk and I because the first 10 days of August are always our Sturgis motorcycle rally, where hundreds of thousands of motorcycles descend upon the Black Hills of western South Dakota. Oh, and we vacate. We missed the New Moon podcast, and I didn't even notice it. So thank you for longtime listeners being a little patient with us. So I'm going to cover a few aspects we've already been through and then look at all of the excitement that is going on this upcoming full moon of Aquarius, Monday, August 19th. We're recording this a couple of days ahead of time. Many of you know we're in the midst of a Mercury retrograde. I did get that webinar done. Mercury's retrograde August 4th through August 28th, and it went retrograde at 4 Virgo back to 21.5 Leo. This full moon of Aquarius is happening just a day after Mercury retrograde's interior conjunction to the Sun, which is August 18th at 26.5 degrees Leo. So, as I said, there's a lot going on in this full moon. There's literally 2 T-squares, and then one of the squares has, I don't know what we are going to call it, but the Pluto making 2 sesqui-squares to Venus and Jupiter, Mars. Well, 3 of those aspects. Anyway, before we get to that, Mercury retrograde is, of course, that time period where we've got to slow down and pay attention to the details, where we need to take time to breathe and get in touch with our right brain because we are overloaded with details left brain-wise, and Mercury wants to throw off old mental patternings of Virgo victimization sometimes, and old patternings of, I'm the center of the universe, Leo. How well are you moving through those? Now, right after Mercury went retrograde, here's one of the aspects that astrologers are talking a lot about, and that's the fact that Jupiter is making first quarter squares to Saturn. We're going to have the first of 3 just right after the full moon of Aquarius. However, what we will also have going on is what I just spoke about before, sesqui-squares, that means a square and a half, 90 plus 45 degrees. And so Jupiter is that sesqui-square beyond Pluto. Remember all the conjunctions in 2020 in Capricorn? Jupiter had 3 to Pluto. Well, Jupiter is going to make 3 waxing sesqui-squares to Pluto in addition to waxing squares to Saturn. So Jupiter has got a 1-2 punch with Pluto and Saturn. just as important to pay attention to the Jupiter aspects to Pluto as the ones to Saturn. So again, Jupiter had the first waxing sesqui-square to Pluto August 7th, 15.5 degrees Gemini, Jupiter, and Pluto is 0.5 degrees Aquarius retrograde. Squares and a half are where we are going from first quarter phase to gibbous phase, where by first quarter is yin energy, and it's just manifest, get it out there. I can do this. Gibbous phase is yin, and that's where we have to then turn inward and kind of recognize that the world doesn't revolve around us. And so these Jupiter-Pluto sesqui-squares, they're both air signs, but it's not a trine. It's that discomfort of the square and a half. And so we can be running a lot of mercurial energy right now between Jupiter and Pluto. You know, right after Jupiter made that waxing semi-square to Pluto, Mars followed up August 12th, and then August 14th, Mars had its conjunction to Jupiter just shy of 17 degrees Gemini. So a lot of flurry, a lot of activity. Now, if you're in the political arena in the U.S. and you're seeing what a rebound or a 180-degree shift we've had from Democrats thinking they have Republicans thinking that they've got a cakewalk to all of a sudden Democrats having all the momentum. Biden choosing not to run for re-election, and Harris going gangbusters right now with her new running mate, Tim Walz. That can be one of those Jupiter-Pluto interpretations of everything going on. Maybe for many of us personally, especially with Mercury retrograde, it's about entertaining information but not taking everything in wholesale. Let's see if I can objectify this a little bit. Let's see if these facts actually work for me. Jupiter-Pluto is about the expansion, Jupiter, of our soul, Pluto. And it's about mentally expanding and growing. So where is that being presented in your world right now? How are you having to look at things differently? What gets a little interesting is that Jupiter and Mars having a waxing square from Venus, and again, they're both making that sesqui-square to Pluto, but they're also, Jupiter, Venus, Mars, are in the T-square with Saturn. So Jupiter, first quarter square Saturn, is going to happen, again, hours after the full moon, August 19th. Jupiter at 17.5 Gemini, Saturn retrograde at 17.5 Pisces, with Venus opposing Saturn at 18 Virgo. Mars gets thrown in there as well. So, this T-square is mutable signs. We know from our base note between Jupiter and Saturn, remember their conjunctions were the end of 2020, and they had that one conjunction at about 0.5 degrees Aquarius, which is where Pluto is right now. Presidential election, here we are rehashing the end of 2020 in a slightly different way. When Jupiter makes a first quarter square to Saturn, it is the pressure to manifest into consciousness and into reality with our world, whatever it is we are attempting to achieve right now. First quarter squares, crises in action. I've built up knowledge. I've built up the insights. I've built up the excitement of what I want to do and change in the reality of my world. All right, I've put all this energy together. Now I got to do it. And here again, with Jupiter and Mars in Gemini, we might want to be a little careful of trying to do too much. Gemini, let's throw it. Any archetype can be distorted or naturally expressed. Gemini, and especially Jupiter in Gemini, we can just throw a bunch of stuff out there and see what sticks. And it may be for Jupiter in Gemini to make choices, to see if it can do a little bit of prioritizing, because, Saturn in Pisces has been dissolving a lot that doesn't work for us. And so what Jupiter has to operate within, squaring Saturn in Pisces, is what is it possible for me to create and what is just not possible within my boundaries of space-time right now. The fact that we have Mars in Gemini with Jupiter and Venus in Virgo waxing square, we perhaps have to be a little careful of relationships getting involved in this whole picture. What about this? What about that? And all our relationships. Well, these are where my values are, and these are where my beliefs are, and these are my choices, and this is what I want to do. And somebody else is going, well, I'm saying the same thing to you. And so Venus making waxing squares to Jupiter, same day as the full moon, August 19th, 17.5, Virgo, Jupiter, and then August 22nd, Venus makes a waxing square to Mars, 22 degrees, Virgo, Gemini. So we have to have some communications and perhaps even some compromising on what our values are and what our desires are in our intimate relationships if we are in one. So when we've got that Jupiter waxing square to Saturn, how do I want to manifest in my world? How do I want to participate as a social being in my world? Jupiter and Saturn have a 20-year cycle. They're called the social planets, the conscious planets. Jupiter expands, Saturn contracts. Together they create those boundaries of what we experience as a social being on the planet. Well, it's personalized with this Venus-Mars waxing square. I want this, I want that again. So how are the communications going, Mercury retrograde? How are you compromising through all of this? Can you find some common ground in what's important with your personal relationships, your intimate relationships? Are we going to resort to lines in the sand? Even though they're the mutable archetypes, it can still be that way. We can get so caught up in my way or the highway with our beliefs. Saturn's retrograde, throwing off old beliefs, but oh boy, I've got the bottom line. And so we can get caught up in the Mars, Jupiter, Gemini arguments. Take a deep breath. Do some deep pondering with that, please. So that's kind of the background as we're moving into this full moon of Aquarius, which again is going to be August 19th. And we're going to have Sun 27 Leo, Moon 27 Aquarius. The full moon of Aquarius is all about objectivity, as I've talked about in most recent podcasts. Stepping back, objectifying. What is it we have to change in our world? Well, guess what? On this full moon of Aquarius, the same day, August 19th, got a lot of aspects August 18th, August 19th as the Democrats open up their national convention. Might be interesting to see how much will there be protesting over the Israel-Palestine conflicts. Stay tuned. We'll find out. How much will the excitement be because we have difference, Aquarius. We have a vision, Aquarius. We have something to gather around and be excited with. Well, on the day of that full moon, Uranus is slowing down to go retrograde, and it is hanging out at 27 degrees Taurus. So we have a tight exact degree T-square. Sun opposite moon, Uranus halfway between them. And Uranus can shake it up a bit on this full moon. On that political level, I would expect that security would be extremely tight in case there is attempts at retaliation from Donald Trump's assassinated attempt, even though the young person who did it was a Republican. They don't know why, but was a Republican. We could see some of that kind of excitement. We could see the violence again. We could also see major insights come through. Uranus is finishing up 7 years in Taurus. It's going to dip into Gemini, retrograde back to Taurus next year as it's changing signs. Saturn at the end of Taurus, how well have you internalized inner security? How self-reliant have you become in your world? And Orion self-reliance, even though it is an earth sign, it's physical, EA likes to say self-reliance is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. It's all 4 elements. It's searching for that inner security in every way. If you've been working upon that, then any upsets, any surprises, any traumas could be somewhat minimized, because when we have that inner security, we can go with the flow of our world. There isn't a one of us on the planet that doesn't experience upsets in a given lifetime, and to have them come every so often. Well, as I've been describing, the Jupiter-Saturn T-square with Venus-Mars, and then the fact that Venus-Mars-Jupiter makes sesqui-squares to Pluto. Oh, and now we've got the T-square of the full moon. There's not a lot of trines in this full moon chart. Maybe a few wide ones coming into being, but this full moon is squares and oppositions and sesqui-squares. Take a deep breath. Search for how you calm yourself down. I am at peace in my world, no matter how it ebbs and flows in my life. The sun's going to move into Virgo August 22nd. My Virgo mantra is, I discern with intuitive wholeness. I discern, Virgo, with intuitive wholeness, Pisces. And so why Virgo is so good at all of that, looking at the details, self-analysis, analysis of whatever needs to be taking place. Don't forget that one of the archetypes of Virgo is discerning versus the distortion of judging. I discern with intuitive wholeness. That can be something that you want to be searching for on all of this full moon energy. And as we get past that interior conjunction of Mercury retrograde to Sun, 26.5 Leo, August 18th, Mercury's going to go direct August 28th, 21.5 Leo. The end of August can start to bring us some nice aha moments. Oh, this is who I am. This is how I love myself deeply, Leo. This is how I'm going to move forward with my new creativity. This is how I'm going to honor and acknowledge the creativity of others, the creativity of the universe that just exists out there for all of us. As Mercury goes direct, we're going to have Venus opposing Neptune at 29 degrees, Virgo, Pisces, the same day. Can I agree to disagree? Can we find some aspects of agreement with the differences in our beliefs and values? I just read a little quote. With malice towards none, charity towards all. The return of civility. With malice towards none, and charity towards all. Can we make it through these combustible aspects and really return to some sense of civility even when we disagree? Venus is then going to move into Libra August 29th through September 22nd. Venus in Libra August 29th through September 22nd. It's going to make a trine to Pluto, 0 degrees Libra Aquarius. You know, Venus is in one of its signs of rulership, and we call Venus's rulership of Taurus the inner side of Venus. It is a yin archetype. That's the self-reliance. That's the relationship we have with ourselves. Venus's rulership of Libra is the outer side of Venus. This is where we have relationships with others. This is where we learn to give and receive. This is where we learn to experience the diversity of relationships to then figure out what we agree with, who we are and who we are not. So Venus in Libra wants to relate, but we can have the distortions of Libra where there are extreme lines drawn in the sand, and I don't want nothing to do with you anymore. Stay tuned. As Venus moves through Libra, you want to do your best to understand that psychology of listening to another so that you can have that back and forth conversation going. Mercury direct, perhaps reach new levels of understanding, new levels of relating to others. Oh, and then we got Uranus going stationary retrograde September 1st, just before the new moon. Uranus is still right there at 27 degrees Taurus. It's getting ready to start its 5-month review of really throwing off anywhere we're stuck. And I would say throwing off resource trauma, throwing off needing to control that outer world and reaching towards that deeper inner security. Uranus retrograde September 1st, 27 degrees Taurus. It's going to go direct January 30th of 25 at 23 degrees Taurus. So it's going to spend 5 months retrograding back 4 degrees in Taurus. It's its last retrograde fully in Taurus. 2025's retrograde will bounce between Gemini, Taurus, and direct into Gemini. So here again, if there are upsets, if there is new trauma, repetition of trauma, the deepest intent is to internalize your security and your sense of well-being. Doesn't mean doing it in Taurian isolation. You're too codependent, Venus and Libra, might happen, but it's not an absolute. It's just how do I rely on myself for all of my needs, for all of my wants? How do I provide my own food, clothing, shelter? And then if I'm in relationship, I'm not codependent or needy with the other person, we can do it co-creatively together. Finally, as well, September 1st, just before the new moon of Virgo on the 2nd, Pluto is going to go retrograde back into Capricorn. I'm actually going to be speaking to this with the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers. They're going to have their online conference again the first weekend in October. I am scheduled to speak on the presidential election and Pluto in that last degree of Capricorn. I've had some, ponderings over that, getting myself ready for my lecture. Pluto, by the way, is going to go direct a month later, October 11th. Happy anniversary, baby. And it will go direct 2938 Capricorn. So it's only going to go back into Capricorn a third of a degree, 22 minutes, not degrees. And I thought about that, and I go, well, we'll have to, reverse up for 2.5 months to deal with the tail end of our Pluto and Capricorn issues. But I just don't think we're going to be going backwards. What's that? Harris Waltz mantra, not going back, no going back, whatever that is. Kind of what I've been pondering, thinking on my own with Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn. Stay tuned. There's enough energy in the skies this entire decade to shake things up whenever we think we've calmed it down. So what responsibilities do you have to address in your world? And yet, how do you still keep an eye on Pluto and Aquarius moving you forward? Because Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn is retrograde. It's throwing off the past. All of the old Capricorn archetypes, old responsibilities that are no longer yours, old career patterning that just doesn't serve you anymore, old familiar relationships that don't quite work anymore. Are you being asked to release? Go retrograde back into Capricorn. And whatever it is, Uranus retrograde, stationary retrograde, hours before, is going to say, and we are letting it go. We are throwing it off one way or another. So here again, tidbit back to full moon of Aquarius. How do we objectify our world? How do we break free? And how do we move forward with however the new in our life is presenting itself? All right. Rattling on. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thank you for doing all the research. Yeah, just thank you for doing all the research. It takes a little bit of time to prep one of these podcasts, and obviously this is an exceptionally busy full moon. So remember also, if you just want to, these are all general transits in the sky for all of us. If you want to explore your own personal chart in a session with Star Lady, Kim Marie, the director of the Evolutionary Astrology Network, just call 1-605-348-5111 or find that personal consultation page on our website, and you can see very easily how to enter your birth data and get on her schedule. So until next new moon, continue to move with joy and passion on this always progressive journey to the cores of our souls. Thanks for listening, everyone.